Captain Lee Hyun stood on the bridge of his ship, watching two alien vessels circle each other in space. The Harmony's voice waited between them, ready to help solve another problem without fighting. This was what humans did best in the galaxy. They stopped wars before they started. "Captain, both ships are powering up their weapons," reported his communications officer. The tension in the bridge grew thick as everyone watched the screens. Lee Hyun smiled calmly. "Open a channel to both vessels. Let's remind them why they called us here." The main screen split to show two very different alien faces. On the left was Captain Brix of the Cortan Trade Union, his blue skin showing the stress marks that meant anger in his species. On the right was Commander Zelf from the Nadian Commerce Guild, her tentacles moving in sharp, aggressive patterns. "Honored friends," Lee Hyun began, his voice steady and warm. "You both requested human mediation because you trust us to find a fair solution. Your ships are aimed at each other, but your real enemy is the misunderstanding between you." Captain Brix spoke first, his translator making his voice sound rough. "The Nadians stole our trade route. They promised to share the mining rights, but now they claim the whole system." Commander Zelf's tentacles writhed faster. "The Cortans broke our agreement first. They brought in their military ships without telling us. We had to protect ourselves." Lee Hyun nodded thoughtfully. "I see two peoples who want the same thing, prosperity for their families. Dr. Park, please share the trade analysis we prepared." Dr. Park Somin stepped forward, her tablet glowing with charts and numbers. She was one of the best xenobiologists in human space, but more importantly, she understood how different species thought about business and honor. "Both of your species value fair trade above all else," she said, making sure both aliens could see her data. "The mining system has 3 planets. Current mining only uses 30% of available resources. There is enough wealth here for both of your peoples to prosper." She showed them a new map with clear boundary lines. "If you divide the system this way, both groups get equal access to the richest deposits. The Cortans get the metals they need for their ships. The Nadians get the crystals they use for their technology." Captain Brix studied the proposal. "What about transport routes? Our ships are larger and need wider lanes." Commander Zelf's tentacles slowed their movement, showing she was thinking. "And our people need the outer planet for research stations. The gravity there works better for our scientists." Lee Hyun leaned forward. "Dr. Park's plan includes shared transport corridors and gives the Nadians full control of the outer planet. In return, the Cortans get exclusive rights to the inner planet's heavy metals. But how do we trust each other after this?" Captain Brix asked. "My people died because we believed Nadian promises before. And Cortan military ships scared our civilians," Commander Zelf added. "How do we know this won't happen again?" This was the part Lee Hyun loved most about his work. Finding the human solution to alien problems. "We propose a joint monitoring station. Both species share the cost and control. Any disputes come to human mediators immediately. No military ships enter the system without permission from both sides." Dr. Park nodded and brought up another screen. "Human engineers can build the station. Our technology is compatible with both of your systems. We ask for nothing except the chance to help maintain peace." The two alien captains looked at each other across the communication link. Slowly, Captain Brix's skin began to return to its normal green color. Commander Zelf's tentacles moved in the graceful patterns that meant consideration among her people. "The humans have never broken their word to us," Captain Brix said finally. "Their mediations always work fairly." "Our elders say the same thing," Commander Zelf agreed. "When humans help solve problems, both sides truly win." Lee Hyun felt the familiar warmth of success. Another war prevented. Another partnership built. "Then we have an agreement?" Both aliens nodded their acceptance. Within an hour, their ships were working together to set up the new boundaries. The weapons that had been aimed at each other were powered down and forgotten. As the Harmony's voice prepared to leave, Dr. Park joined Lee Hyun at the observation deck. They watched the alien ships beginning their joint operations. "Another day, another war prevented," she said with satisfaction. "Do you ever wonder what the galaxy would be like if humans hadn't developed the mediation protocols?" Lee Hyun thought about the question. 200 years ago, when humans first joined the Galactic Council, things had been very different. War was common. Species fought over resources, territory, and old grudges. The galaxy was full of fear and anger. "Admiral Kim always says we found our true purpose out here," he replied. "Humans are good at understanding different viewpoints. We see solutions where others see only conflict. Dr. Park smiled. The youngsters in the academy think we're naturally peaceful. They don't know about the old Earth histories, that was true. Most young humans grew up learning about diplomacy and cooperation. The violent history of Earth was taught as ancient knowledge, important but not relevant to modern life. Humans had grown beyond their aggressive past. Those days are long gone, Lee Hyun said. We chose a better path. Back on the bridge, a message was waiting from Admiral Kim Tae-ho. The Admiral's face appeared on the screen, looking tired but pleased. Good work with the Corton-Nadian situation, he said. I've got another assignment for you. There's a dispute in the spiral arm between 3 mining companies. Could get ugly if we don't step in. Understood, sir. The Harmony's voice is ready. There's something else. Admiral Kim's expression became more serious. We're getting reports of aggressive activity in the Outer Rim, a species called the Veltar Empire. They've been expanding their territory and ignoring council mediation requests. Lee Hyun frowned. Ignoring human mediation? That's unusual. Very unusual. They claim human methods are too slow for their needs. Council intelligence thinks they might be testing our resolve. Dr. Park looked concerned. What do we know about them? Admiral Kim consulted his notes. Military-focused culture. They believe strength comes from conquest. They've absorbed 3 smaller species in the past 50 years, always through force. Any diplomatic contact? Lee Hyun asked. They refuse to meet with our mediators. They say humans are weak because we talk instead of fight. Admiral Kim's voice carried a hint of something Lee Hyun had rarely heard from any human leader. Frustration. Sir, has the council considered showing them our historical records? Dr. Park suggested. Sometimes species understand human capability better when they see our past. Admiral Kim shook his head. Council policy is clear. We don't use our history as a threat. We've moved beyond those days. Lee Hyun understood. The Galactic Council had strict rules about sharing species' violent histories. It was considered poor diplomacy to threaten others with past actions. Humans had agreed to these rules because they wanted to be judged by their current peaceful nature, not their warlike past. What are our orders regarding the Veltar? Lee Hyun asked. Continue normal operations. If they request mediation, we respond. If they don't, we leave them alone. The Council believes they'll eventually see the benefits of cooperation. After the communication ended, Lee Hyun and Dr. Park discussed the situation. The Veltar sounded different from the usual species they helped. Most aggressive species still respected human mediation, even if they didn't like it. The Veltar seemed to actively dismiss human methods. Do you think they're right? Dr. Park asked. Are we weak because we choose diplomacy over force? Lee Hyun considered the question carefully. Every species in the galaxy has the choice between cooperation and conflict. We chose cooperation and became the most respected mediators in council space. How is that weak? But what if someone forces conflict on us? Lee Hyun looked out at the stars. In 200 years of human space travel, no species had ever forced a direct conflict with humans. The closest had been some piracy incidents and border disputes, all solved through negotiation or council intervention. Then we adapt, he said finally. Humans are good at adapting, Dr. Park nodded. But something in her expression suggested she wasn't entirely satisfied with that answer. As the Harmony's voice jumped to hyperspace toward their next assignment, neither of them knew that in the distant Outer Rim, Veltar military commanders were already planning something that would test everything humans believed about their peaceful nature. The galaxy's longest period of peace was about to face its greatest challenge. But for now, Lee Hyun and his crew flew toward another diplomatic mission, carrying with them the hopes of a galaxy that had learned to solve its problems with words instead of weapons. The human way had become the galaxy's way, and almost everyone believed it would stay that way forever. General Bak Jin-woo was watering his tomatoes when the attack sirens began screaming across New Sol Colony. The sound cut through the peaceful morning air like a knife, sending birds flying from the trees around his small farm. He dropped his watering can and looked up at the sky, his old military instincts kicking in immediately. 3 dark shapes moved across the blue sky above the colony. They were too big to be cargo ships and moving too fast to be friendly visitors. Bak Jin-woo had not seen military vessels in his skies for 20 years, not since he retired from the Human Defense Corps to become a farmer. All civilians report to emergency shelters immediately, came the announcement from the colony's communication system. This is not a drill. Unknown vessels are approaching our airspace. Bak Jinwoo ran toward his house, but not to hide in a shelter. In his bedroom closet, behind boxes of old photos and winter clothes, he kept a small case that he had hoped never to open again. Inside were his old military communications gear and emergency protocols that every retired Defense Corps officer was required to maintain. As he activated the emergency beacon, explosions began rocking the colony. The windows in his house shook, and he could see smoke rising from the direction of the town center. Through his communications gear, he heard panicked voices from across New Seoul. "The school is hit. We need medical teams at the school. Market District is burning. Civilian casualties reported. Where are our defenses? Why aren't our shields working?" Bak Jinwoo's blood ran cold when he heard that last message. New Seoul was a peaceful farming colony. They had basic defensive shields for asteroid protection, but nothing designed to stop military weapons. No one had ever attacked a human civilian colony before. He switched to the colony administrator frequency. "This is General Bak Jinwoo, retired Defense Corps. I'm taking emergency command of civilian defense operations." "General Bak." "Thank the stars," came the reply from Administrator Chen. "We don't know what to do. These ships just started shooting at us without any warning. Get all civilians to the underground shelters immediately. How many farming vehicles do we have that can be modified?" "Sir, farming vehicles? Against military ships?" "Just answer the question. Maybe 50 tractors, 20 harvester machines, and a dozen cargo haulers." Bak Jinwoo was already running toward the colony's workshop center. "Get me 15 volunteers who know how to weld. We're going to turn farming equipment into weapons." At the elementary school, teacher Na Yeon-soo was helping her students crawl under their desks when the first explosion hit the building. The lights went out and chunks of ceiling fell around them. 7-year-old Minji started crying and several other children joined her. "It's okay," Na Yeon-soo said, trying to keep her voice calm. "We're playing the hiding game, remember? Just like we practiced." But this was not like the emergency drills they had practiced. In the drills, they pretended there might be a fire or an earthquake. No one had ever told them what to do when alien ships attacked their school. Another explosion shook the building closer this time. Through the broken windows, Na Yeon-soo could see one of the alien ships hovering directly above the playground where her students played every day. It was firing some kind of energy weapon at the school's main building. "Teacher, I'm scared," whispered Dong-hyun, one of her quietest students. "I know, sweetie, but we're going to be brave together, okay?" She gathered the children closer to her, trying to shield them with her own body as pieces of the building continued to fall around them. In her heart, she wondered why anyone would attack a school full of children. What kind of people would do such a thing? The shooting continued for 3 more hours. When it finally stopped, the silence felt almost as terrible as the explosions had been. Bak Jinwoo stood in the ruins of New Seoul's town center, surrounded by 15 tractors that his volunteers had turned into makeshift weapons. They had welded metal plates to the sides for armor and mounted anything that could shoot, even old hunting rifles and construction laser cutters. It was not much of a military force, but it was all they had been able to build in 3 hours. The alien ships had stopped their attack and moved away, but not before destroying most of the colony's important buildings. "General," called one of his volunteers, a young man named Taemin who ran the colony's repair shop. "The casualty reports are coming in." Bak Jinwoo took the tablet with shaking hands. The numbers made his stomach feel sick. 847 dead. Most of them were civilians who had been in the wrong place when the attack started. 37 of them were children from the elementary school. Among the dead was Na Yeon-soo, the young teacher who had died protecting her students when part of the school building collapsed. She had covered 3 children with her body, saving their lives with her own. "Sir," Taemin said quietly, "there's something else. We found wreckage from one of the attacking ships. The design matches intelligence reports about the Veltar Empire." Bak Jinwoo stared at the twisted metal fragments. So this was how the Veltar had decided to test human resolve, not through military channels or diplomatic challenges, but by murdering innocent farmers and children. 2 days later, Captain Lee Hyun arrived on New Seoul aboard the Harmony's Voice. He had never seen anything like the devastation that greeted him. Entire city blocks were reduced to rubble. The elementary school was a crater in the ground. The colony's hospital had been specifically targeted and destroyed. He found General Bak Jinwoo in the temporary command center, coordinating rescue operations and trying to organize the survivors. General, I'm Captain Lee Hyun, Human Diplomatic Corps. I'm here to investigate what happened and begin diplomatic negotiations for reparations. Bak Jin-woo looked up from his work, and Lee Hyun was shocked by what he saw in the older man's eyes. It was not grief or fear, but something much more dangerous. Cold, controlled anger. Captain, with respect, there's nothing to negotiate. The Veltar attacked our colony without warning or provocation. They targeted civilians, including children. This was not a military action. It was mass murder. Lee Hyun had read the preliminary reports during his journey to New Seoul, but seeing the destruction in person made it much more real. General, I understand your anger, but diplomatic solutions are still possible. The Veltar may claim this was a mistake or a misunderstanding. 847 people are dead, Captain. There is no misunderstanding that can explain this. Dr. Park So-min joined them, carrying a tablet full of evidence she had collected from the attack site. Captain, I've analyzed the weapon signatures and attack patterns. This was a deliberate assault on civilian targets. They specifically aimed at the school, hospital, and market areas. Lee Hyun felt something cold growing in his chest. In 200 years of human space travel, no one had ever deliberately targeted human civilians. There had been accidents, misunderstandings, and conflicts, but nothing like this. Have we made contact with the Veltar leadership? He asked. They responded to our initial communication, Dr. Park replied. They claim it was a navigation error. They say their ships were conducting military exercises and accidentally entered our space. General Bak Jin-woo stood up slowly. Navigation error? For 3 hours? While they systematically destroyed our colony? Lee Hyun knew the general was right. No navigation error could explain the precision and duration of the attack. This had been planned and executed deliberately. What do we do now? He asked, more to himself than to the others. We demand justice, General Bak Jin-woo said firmly. We take this to the Galactic Council and make the Veltar pay for what they've done. That evening, Lee Hyun sent his report to Admiral Kim Tae-ho and Counselor Choi Da-eun. The evidence was clear and undeniable. The Veltar Empire had committed an unprovoked act of aggression against human civilians. Within a week, the matter was brought before the full Galactic Council. Counselor Choi Da-eun presented the evidence with her usual diplomatic skill, but Lee Hyun could see the strain in her voice as she described the attack on the school. The evidence shows a deliberate act of aggression against innocent civilians, she concluded. The Human Federation demands full reparations and a formal apology from the Veltar Empire. The Veltar representative, a large creature with thick armor plating and multiple arms, responded without any sign of regret. The Veltar Empire regrets the navigation error that led to this unfortunate incident. However, we cannot accept responsibility for accidents that occurred during legitimate military exercises. This was not an accident, Counselor Choi replied. Our evidence clearly shows the Veltar Empire disputes your evidence, the representative interrupted. Furthermore, we claim diplomatic immunity under council regulations. This matter is closed. The council chamber fell silent. In 200 years of human participation in galactic politics, no species had ever claimed diplomatic immunity to avoid responsibility for attacking humans. Elder Morden, one of the oldest members of the council, requested permission to speak. His species had been among the first to make contact with humans centuries ago. I wish to meet privately with the Veltar representative, he said. There are matters of galactic history that should be discussed. After the session, Elder Morden approached the Veltar representative in a private chamber. The ancient alien's voice carried the weight of centuries when he spoke. US 6 months after New Seoul, engineer Yang Hye-jin was working late in her laboratory when the emergency broadcasts began. She looked up from her project designs to see breaking news flashing across every screen in the facility. This is Galactic News Network with urgent reports. Multiple human colonies are under attack in what appears to be a coordinated assault by Veltar Empire forces. Yang Hye-jin dropped her tools and ran to the main communication center. Around her, other engineers and technicians gathered as the terrible news continued to unfold. The colonies of Bright Star, New Harmony, and Peace Valley are all reporting direct military attacks. Early estimates suggest thousands of civilian casualties. Yang Hye-jin felt her heart stop. Her brother Min-kyu lived on Bright Star with his family. His wife So-young was a nurse there, and their twin daughters had just started school. The news reporter continued with grim efficiency. Unlike the previous New Seoul incident, These attacks are being broadcast live by the Veltar forces. They appear to be deliberately targeting civilian areas including schools, hospitals, and residential districts. The main screen switched to live footage from Bright Star Colony. Yang Hejin watched in horror as Veltar ships methodically destroyed her brother's neighborhood. The attackers were not trying to capture territory or resources. They were simply killing humans for the entire galaxy to see. We go now to Veltar Supreme Commander Zethkar, who is broadcasting from his command ship, the reporter announced. The screen filled with the image of a massive Veltar warrior covered in battle armor. When he spoke, his voice carried the confidence of someone who believed he had already won a war. People of the galaxy, witness the weakness of the humans. For too long they have pretended to be your protectors and mediators. Today, the Veltar Empire shows their true nature. They are soft, weak creatures who cannot defend even their own children. Commander Zethkar gestured to screens behind him showing the ongoing attacks. We have destroyed 3 of their colonies in a single day. Their so-called defense corps has not even responded. Their diplomatic ships flee when they see our weapons. This is what human protection truly means. Nothing. Yang Hyejin stared at the screen, tears streaming down her face. In the background of the Veltar broadcast, she could see Bright Star Colony burning. Somewhere in those flames were her brother's family, along with thousands of other innocent people. The galaxy no longer needs to fear human judgment or follow human rules, Commander Zethkar continued. Strong species will take what they need from weak species. This is the natural order that humans have prevented for too long. The broadcast switched back to the news anchor, whose professional composure was clearly strained. Galactic Council emergency sessions are being called, but initial reports suggest the Veltar Empire is refusing all diplomatic contact. They have declared the attacked human colonies to be demonstration zones, where they are showing the galaxy their military superiority. Yang Hejin turned away from the screens and walked back to her laboratory. Around her, colleagues were crying, making emergency calls to family members or simply staring in shock at the news. But Yang Hejin had work to do. She activated her private communication system and sent an encrypted message to a restricted military address. Colonel Song, this is Yang Hejin. Project Remembrance is ready for activation. Requesting immediate authorization to begin conversion protocols. The response came within minutes. Authorization granted. Begin immediate conversion. Time frame is now critical. Yang Hejin looked around her laboratory one last time. For 6 months, she had been working on Project Remembrance, officially a memorial project to honor the New Soul victims. In reality, it was something much more important. She activated a hidden control panel and began entering commands that would transform every manufacturing facility in human space. Factories that made farming equipment would now make weapons. Shipyards that built cargo vessels would now build warships. Research stations that studied peaceful applications of technology would now remember their original military purposes. Across human space, similar conversations were happening. Dr. Park So-min sat in her office on the diplomatic vessel Harmony's Voice, staring at a message from her sister's family on Peace Valley Colony. The message had been sent 6 hours ago before the attack began. Now Peace Valley was silent. Captain Lee Hyun found her there, his own face showing the strain of the day's events. Dr. Park, I'm sorry. We've lost contact with Peace Valley Colony. My sister's family was there, she said quietly. Her husband, their 2 children. They moved there because it was supposed to be safe. Lee Hyun sat down across from her. In all their years of diplomatic work, they had never faced anything like this. Every principle they believed in, peaceful negotiation, diplomatic immunity, the sanctity of civilian life, and had been shattered in a single day. The Veltar are broadcasting their attacks across the galaxy, he said. They want everyone to see what they're doing to us. Dr. Park looked up from her tablet. Why, what do they gain by murdering civilians? They're trying to prove that human protection means nothing. If they can attack us without consequences, other species might decide they don't need to follow galactic law either. They both understood what this meant. The Veltar were not just attacking human colonies. They were attacking the entire system of peace and cooperation that humans had helped build over 2 centuries. Captain, Dr. Park said slowly, what do we do when diplomacy fails completely? Lee Hyun had been asking himself the same question all day. I don't know. This has never happened before. On Earth, Admiral Kim Tae-ho walked through corridors that had not been used for 200 years. Deep beneath the planet's surface, in facilities that officially did not exist, humanity's true military leaders were gathering for the first time since the species had joined the Galactic Council. Lieutenant Colonel Song Min-ho was waiting in the main briefing room, surrounded by holographic displays showing real-time updates from the attacked colonies. The death toll was climbing steadily. "Report, Colonel," Admiral Kim ordered. 51,000 confirmed dead across the 3 colonies. The Veltar are using precision weapons to target civilian infrastructure while avoiding anything that might have military value. They're not trying to capture territory, they're trying to terrorize the galaxy. Admiral Kim studied the tactical displays. "How long until our response capabilities are fully operational?" "Project Arsenal will be complete in 48 hours. Yang Heejin's conversion protocols are ahead of schedule. The manufacturing facilities are already producing military equipment. And our existing fleet?" Colonel Song activated another display. "That's where things get interesting, sir. Our ships have been operating under peaceful configuration for 2 centuries, but the basic hulls and drive systems were always designed for combat. Conversion to military status can happen much faster than building new ships." Admiral Kim nodded. "The galaxy thinks our research vessels and cargo ships are civilian craft." "Yes, sir. They have no idea that every human ship in space can be converted to military use within 72 hours. A communication alert sounded. "Admiral," came a voice from the command center. "We're receiving an emergency transmission from the Galactic Council. They're demanding an immediate response to the Veltar attacks." Admiral Kim looked at Colonel Song. "What kind of response are they expecting?" "They want us to negotiate, sir. To find a diplomatic solution that will make the Veltar stop their attacks." "And if the Veltar refuse to negotiate?" There was a long pause. "The Council expects us to accept the losses and continue seeking peaceful resolution." Admiral Kim felt something cold and hard settle in his chest. The galaxy expected humans to let their people be murdered while continuing to beg for peace. "Colonel, authorize full activation of all Arsenal protocol systems. Contact Dr. Lim Jae-sung and tell him it's time to share what his research teams have really been studying for the past 2 centuries. Colonel Song looked surprised. "Sir, Dr. Lim's projects are classified beyond normal levels. Even I don't know what his teams have been working on. Dr. Lim has been conducting detailed analysis of every species' military capabilities, technological weaknesses, and strategic vulnerabilities. For 200 years, while we've been helping them solve their problems, we've also been learning exactly how to defeat them if necessary." The implications of this revelation were staggering. While the galaxy saw human researchers as peaceful scientists studying alien cultures, they had actually been conducting the most comprehensive military intelligence operation in galactic history. "Begin immediate recall of all human diplomatic personnel from non-essential positions." Admiral Kim continued. "Captain Lee Hyun and his team should continue their work, but everyone else needs to be out of potential target zones." "What about our response to the Council's demands for diplomatic action?" Admiral Kim thought for a moment. "Send a message to Counselor Choi Da-yoon. Tell her to inform the Council that humanity will address the Veltar problem directly. No further diplomatic intervention will be necessary." As Colonel Song left to carry out his orders, Admiral Kim remained alone in the briefing room, staring at the casualty reports from the 3 destroyed. Fleet Admiral Oh Dong-hyun stood on the bridge of the warship Determined Justice, watching as space itself seemed to ripple around his fleet. One by one, massive human vessels were dropping their cloaking systems and revealing themselves to the galaxy for the first time in 2 centuries. The ships that appeared were not the small, peaceful vessels that everyone knew humans to operate. These were enormous warships, each one larger than the biggest Veltar battlecruiser. They had been hiding in plain sight, disguised as research stations, mining platforms, and deep space observation posts. "Admiral, all ships report ready status," announced his communications officer, Specialist Kang Yoo-jin. "The fleet is fully operational." Admiral Oh looked at the tactical display showing his force. 237 capital ships, each one equipped with weapons technology that the galaxy had never seen. Around them, thousands of smaller vessels were also revealing their true nature: fighters, destroyers, and support ships that had been masquerading as civilian craft. "How long since the Veltar attacked our colonies?" he asked. 72 hours, sir." And how long did it take us to move our entire fleet into position around their home system? 71 hours, sir. Admiral O allowed himself a small smile. The Veltar thought they were dealing with a weak, peaceful species that would take months to organize any kind of military response. They had no idea that human ships had been moving into attack positions before their own assault on the 3 colonies had even ended. Open a channel to all ships in the fleet. It's time to introduce ourselves to the galaxy. Throughout Veltar space, the reveal of the human fleet was causing panic. Their military commanders had been expecting diplomatic protests and maybe some small patrol ships. Instead, they found themselves surrounded by a naval force that dwarfed their entire military. Veltar Supreme Commander Zethkar was in his command center when the reports started coming in. Sir, we're detecting massive energy signatures throughout our territory. Unknown vessels are appearing everywhere. What kind of vessels? He demanded. Military ships, sir. Very large military ships. They're human ships. Commander Zethkar laughed harshly. Impossible. Humans don't have a military fleet. They have diplomatic vessels and cargo ships. Sir, you need to see this. The main screen activated to show space around the Veltar homeworld. Where there had been empty space an hour ago, there were now dozens of enormous human warships. They were arranged in perfect military formation, their weapons powered but not yet firing. How many ships? Commander Zethkar asked, his voice suddenly much quieter. We're still counting, sir. So far we've identified over 200 capital ships and several thousand smaller vessels. They're spread throughout our entire territory. Commander Zethkar stared at the display. Each human ship was larger and more heavily armed than anything in the Veltar fleet. Worse, they had appeared without any warning, suggesting stealth technology far beyond what the Veltar thought possible. Get me a communication channel to these human ships, he ordered. On the bridge of the Determined Justice, Admiral O received the incoming transmission. Admiral, the Veltar Supreme Commander is requesting communication. Put him through. Commander Zethkar's image appeared on the main screen. For the first time since Admiral O had been watching Veltar communications, the alien commander looked uncertain. I am Supreme Commander Zethkar of the Veltar Empire. You are in violation of our territorial space. Admiral O stepped forward so the Veltar commander could see him clearly. I am Fleet Admiral O Donghyun, of the Human Defense Fleet. You are in violation of galactic law regarding the protection of civilian populations. We demand that you remove your ships immediately. Admiral O's expression did not change. We demand that you surrender immediately for prosecution under galactic war crime statutes. Commander Zethkar's confidence seemed to return slightly. You cannot threaten the Veltar Empire. We are a military power with a proud warrior tradition. And we are humans, Admiral O replied simply. Do you know what that means? Before Commander Zethkar could respond, another voice joined the conversation. It was Captain Lee Hyun, speaking from his diplomatic vessel, which was now part of the massive human fleet. Supreme Commander, this is Captain Lee Hyun. I was one of the diplomats you ignored when we tried to negotiate after New Seoul. I want you to understand something very important, Captain. Lee's voice carried a tone that no one in the galaxy had ever heard from a human before. Cold, controlled anger mixed with absolute certainty. For 200 years, humans have chosen to be mediators and peacekeepers. We gave up our military nature to help the galaxy solve problems without violence, but you made that choice impossible to continue. The main display on both ships now showed tactical information that made Commander Zethkar's remaining confidence disappear completely. The human fleet was not just larger than the Veltar military. It was larger than the combined military forces of every species in the galaxy. This is impossible, Commander Zethkar whispered. Where did these ships come from? Dr. Lim Jae-sung answered that question from his position aboard the research vessel Truthseeker, which had just revealed itself to be one of the most advanced intelligence-gathering ships ever built. Commander, for 2 centuries, human scientists have been studying every species in the galaxy. We learned your languages, your cultures, your technologies, and your military capabilities. What you thought was peaceful. Research was actually the most comprehensive intelligence operation in galactic history. Dr. Lim activated a series of displays showing detailed analysis of Veltar military, technology, tactics, and weaknesses. We know exactly how your shields work, how your weapons function, and how your command structure operates. We know where every Veltar military base is located, how many ships you have, and what their capabilities are. But more importantly, Captain Lee continued, we know that you specifically targeted human children in your attacks. You killed teachers like Na Yeon-soo who died protecting her students. You murdered families like Dr. Park's sister and her children. You broadcast these murders to terrorize the galaxy. Admiral O stepped forward again. You wanted to show the galaxy what happens when someone challenges Veltar's strength. Now we're going to show the galaxy what happens when someone murders human civilians. The demonstration began with surgical precision. Human ships targeted every Veltar military installation simultaneously. Their weapons were unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Energy beams that could slice through the strongest armor, missiles that could track targets across star systems, and defensive systems that made them nearly impossible to hit. But the most terrifying aspect of the human attack was its restraint. They destroyed every military target in Veltar space within 6 hours, but they were careful not to harm any civilians. Veltar military bases were reduced to scrap metal, but nearby civilian areas were untouched. Specialist Kang Yu-jin monitored the tactical situation from her advanced fighter craft. She had been chosen to pilot humanity's most sophisticated warship, a vessel that combined speed, firepower, and stealth capabilities that seemed impossible by galactic standards. Admiral, all Veltar military assets have been neutralized, she reported. No civilian casualties reported. Their entire fleet is disabled, but crews are alive. Confirmed. All human ships cease fire. Commander Zethkar, do you wish to surrender now? The Veltar Supreme Commander stared at the wreckage of his entire military force. Every ship, every base, every weapon system had been destroyed in less time than it had taken him to attack a single human colony. This is not possible. No species has this kind of military power. Captain Lee spoke again, his voice carrying the weight of galactic history. Commander, there is something the galaxy forgot about humans. We are not naturally peaceful. We became peaceful by choice, after learning what our true nature could accomplish. Dr. Lim activated another display, this one showing archived footage from Earth's ancient history. The images showed human warfare from throughout their planet's past. The scale of destruction, the innovative weapons, the determination to fight against impossible odds. Humans are persistence hunters, Commander. When we decide to hunt something, we never give up. We learn everything about our prey. We develop the tools we need, and we pursue our target until we succeed. For 200 years, we chose not to hunt anyone. We chose to help the galaxy build peace instead of war. But you changed that when you decided to murder our people. Admiral O's voice cut through the communication with final authority. Supreme Commander Zethkar, you are hereby under arrest for crimes against civilian populations. Your empire is dissolved. Veltar territories will be placed under galactic administration until your people learn to participate in civilized society. You cannot do this, Commander Zethkar protested. The galaxy will not allow one species to dominate all others. The galaxy, said a new voice, will thank us for removing a threat to galactic peace. Elder Mordun appeared on the communication channel, speaking from the Galactic Council chambers. Behind him, representatives from dozens of species were watching the events in Veltar space. The Council has voted unanimously to support human military action against the Veltar Empire. Your attacks on civilian populations violated every principle of galactic law. The Elders' President Yoon Se-byul stood before the Galactic Council, looking out at representatives from every known species in the galaxy. The Great Chamber was quieter than it had ever been before. Every alien delegate watched her with a mixture of respect and carefully hidden fear. It had been 1 year since the Veltar War ended. 1 year since the galaxy learned that their peaceful human mediators were actually the most dangerous military force in known space. The political landscape had changed completely. Honored delegates, President Yoon began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation systems. We gather today to establish new principles for galactic peace. The events of the past year have shown us that our old methods of maintaining order were not sufficient. She gestured to a holographic display showing casualty figures from the Veltar attacks. 51,000 human civilians died because we believed that diplomatic immunity and peaceful negotiation could solve every problem. We were wrong. In the audience, Ambassador Shin Woo-jin watched the faces of the various alien delegates. Some showed genuine remorse for their past dismissal of human warnings about the Veltar. Others displayed the nervous uncertainty of species trying to figure out how to interact with humans now that they knew the truth. However, President Yoon continued, humanity does not seek to rule the galaxy through fear. We return to our role as mediators and protectors, but under new conditions that will prevent future tragedies. The first new condition was simple but revolutionary. Any species that committed genocide or deliberately targeted civilian populations would forfeit their right to exist as an independent government. The galaxy would no longer tolerate mass murder in the name of military conquest. The second condition was the establishment of the Guardian Protocol. Human military forces would be stationed throughout the galaxy, ready to respond immediately to threats against civilian populations. No species would have to wait for diplomatic negotiations while their people were being slaughtered. These changes are not punishments, President Yoon explained. They are protections for all peaceful species in the galaxy. The strong will no longer be able to prey upon the weak while hiding behind diplomatic procedures. Former Veltar leader Reshtan stood to address the assembly. He had been chosen by his people to lead their new democratic government after the empire was dissolved. His first act as leader had been to offer a formal apology to the families of every human killed in the attacks. President Yoon, the Veltar people accept full responsibility for the crimes committed by our former government. We pledge to spend the next century making reparations to the families we harmed and proving that we can be worthy members of galactic society. Reshitan's voice carried genuine regret. My people were taught that strength came from conquest and that peace was weakness. We now understand that true strength comes from choosing not to use your power against those who cannot defend themselves. President Yoon nodded respectfully. The Veltar people are welcome to rebuild their society under the principles of peace and cooperation. Your former government's crimes do not define your entire species. This was another important change in galactic policy. While governments that committed atrocities would be dissolved, their people would be given the chance to create new, peaceful societies. The goal was rehabilitation, not revenge. Captain Lee Hyun sat in the diplomatic section, wearing his newly updated uniform. After the war, he had been promoted to admiral, but he had chosen to return to diplomatic service. The galaxy needed experienced mediators now more than ever. Admiral Lee, President Yoon called, would you please share your observations about how these changes have affected diplomatic negotiations? Lee stood and activated a display showing statistics from the past year. President Yoon, diplomatic success rates have increased by 300% since the new protocols were established. Species that previously refused mediation now eagerly seek human assistance in resolving their disputes. The reasons for this change were obvious to everyone in the chamber. When human mediators arrived to help solve a problem, both sides knew that refusing to cooperate meant potentially facing the same military response that had ended the Veltar Empire. However, Lee continued, it's important to note that we have not needed to use military force since the Veltar conflict. The knowledge that such force exists has been sufficient to maintain peace. Dr. Park So-min had established the Memory Institute on Earth, dedicated to preserving the stories of those killed in the Veltar attacks. She had also created educational programs to help other species understand the importance of protecting civilian populations. The galaxy must never forget what happened to our people, she had said when the institute opened. Not for revenge, but to ensure it never happens again to anyone. The institute had become a pilgrimage site for species throughout the galaxy. Leaders came to learn about the human civilians who had died, the teachers and farmers and children whose deaths had awakened humanity's military might. Young Hee-jin had completed her transformation from engineer to memorial designer. The factories that had been converted to military production during the war were now being converted again, this time to build monuments and educational centers throughout human space. Every memorial we build reminds us that we chose peace for 200 years, she explained to visitors. But it also reminds us that some things are worth fighting for. The most significant change in the galaxy was how other species viewed conflict resolution. Before the Veltar War, many aggressive species had seen human mediation as an obstacle to their expansion plans. Now they saw it as a lifeline that could save them from making fatal mistakes. Ambassador Shin Woo-jin experienced this change firsthand during a recent diplomatic mission. Two species had been arguing over mining rights in a disputed system. and their conflict was escalating toward military action. Ambassador, one of the alien leaders, had said, "We request immediate human mediation. We do not want this dispute to become something that might attract unwanted attention." The phrase "unwanted attention" had become galactic code for the possibility of human military intervention. No species wanted to risk being seen as an aggressor that might threaten civilian populations. The mediation had been completed in 2 days, with both sides accepting a compromise that gave them shared access to the mining system. In the old days, such a dispute might have led to a war lasting years. The galaxy has learned to fear war itself. Ambassador Shin reported to President Yoon. Not just human military power, but the entire concept of using violence to solve problems. This was exactly what humanity had hoped to achieve. By demonstrating overwhelming military capability once, they had made future demonstrations unnecessary. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Elder Morden, now one of the most respected voices in the Galactic Council, often spoke about the changes he had witnessed. "In my long life, I have seen the galaxy cycle through periods of war and peace. But this is different. This is the first time that peace has been maintained through the certain knowledge of what war truly costs." He would often tell younger species about the old days, when military conflicts were common, and species regularly fought over territory and resources. Those days ended when the galaxy learned to respect the oldest rule: never enrage the humans. 5 years after the Veltar War, Captain Lee Hyun was mediating a dispute between 2 minor species over trade routes. The negotiations were proceeding smoothly, but he noticed that both sides kept glancing at him nervously. Finally, one of the alien representatives spoke up. "Captain Lee, we want you to know that neither of our species has any intention of escalating this dispute. We are committed to finding a peaceful solution." Lee smiled gently. "I appreciate that commitment. But you should know that even if this dispute did escalate, human military intervention would only occur if civilian populations were threatened. We don't get involved in legitimate military conflicts between consenting governments." Both alien representatives looked relieved. "But Captain," one asked, "how do we know what might cross the line? How do we know what would bring human retaliation?" Lee thought for a moment, then gave them the answer that had become standard for such questions. "It's simple. If you're fighting soldiers who chose to be soldiers, that's war. If you're killing civilians who never chose to fight, that's murder. We respond to murder." This distinction had become the foundation of the new galactic order. Species could still have conflicts and even wars, but the deliberate targeting of civilian populations was absolutely forbidden. As the negotiations concluded successfully, Lee reflected on how much had changed since his days aboard the Harmony's Voice. The galaxy was more peaceful now, but for very different reasons than before. In the old days, peace had been maintained through hope and goodwill. Species chose cooperation because they believed it was morally right. Now peace was maintained through the certain knowledge that some choices had consequences that no military force in the galaxy could survive. President Yoon had said it best in her speech. To the new Galactic Constitution Assembly, "We prefer to be your mediators and friends, but if you force us to choose between your aggression and innocent lives,